Welcome into Rounding the Bases.
Round the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. He's a man, goddamn.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into yet another episode of Rounding the Bases, the podcast about culture and leadership with a baseball twist, presented by Community America Credit Union. Believe in unbelievable. Love the partnership that I have with Community America. Also want to mention the partnership with Chief of Staff Kansas City. So anybody out there listening, if you're hiring, if you're looking for someone, if you're looking to be placed, give them a try. Check them out, chiefofstaffkc.com. I do a lot of work with them. Great people. I know them on a personal and a professional level. At minimum, just a great resource. So check them out, chiefofstaffkc.com. Speaking of leadership, that will be the topic today. And of course, it is always the theme, but perhaps even more so today than usual. Uncommon success begins with profoundly impactful leadership. Here where I'm at in Kansas City, there's nobody who understood that better than the man known as Mr. K, the incomparable Ewing Marion Kauffman. I never met him. I wish I had. But of course, I've worked at a stadium that bears his name and his wife's name, Kauffman Stadium, for 15 years now, going into season number 16 for me. Using timeless principles, he built a winning strategy that worked as well in business as it did in baseball. And I'm joined today by two innovators using the basics of yesteryear to fuel the business execs of tomorrow. My esteemed guests are Dr. Myles Gartland, the Dean of Rockhurst University's Helzberg School of Management, and Dave Pickhardt, co-founder of the Fuel Leadership Forum and former senior executive at Marion Laboratories. We've seen what great leadership can do. Now they're showing us how with an actionable approach to breakthrough performance, because well-planned always leads to well done. And with that said, I welcome in right now to the podcast my two guests, Dave Pickhardt and Myles Gartland. Gentlemen, how are you?
Doing well.
Doing well. Thank you, Joel.
Thanks. All right. Well, let's start with, and I'll identify the voices as the listeners get to figure out who is who. Myles, I'll start with you. And we've seen each other a few times as I've had the chance to go over and speak to the executive MBA program over at Rockhurst. And I'm always interested, even year after year, as I go in there and the great Linda Endicott brings me and my good friend Andre Davison to talk to the class. The world keeps changing, right? And so it's fascinating just to see the evolution of all of this. A lot of it pandemic related. At the same time, I mentioned yesteryear, there's so many principles I think that'll always exist. Where are we in 2023 in terms of leadership?
It's again, it is. It's a you got it right. It is a foot in the past, and actually making sure we do remember where we came from. We're as a Jesuit school, we've been doing this for 450 years. So we always talk about how do we continue to bring forward everything that we have learned and done and what we stood for with one leg, and the other leg is how do you keep it in modernity? We are still coming out of a post-pandemic world, and every week we think we know what it's going to be like with hiring employees and leadership and change management, and then something new happens. And so we're really on a precipice of change management that's going to make leaders really have to adjust to not only the environmental situations going on, but frankly, some of the new generation of workers that are coming in. And combining those two things and the past and the future is the name of the game.
I feel like, Dave, right now, we'll get into fuel in just a bit, but I mean, I don't remember in my lifetime, Dave, the world changing like it is right now. Of course, change has always happened. It always will. It always has. I truly believe so much of this is the pandemic, because we came out of that pandemic and we're all different. Mm-hmm. We are completely, we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the pandemic. I don't know about you guys, but I'll forever remember that March day when they started canceling everything. It was a night, it was in the middle of the week. And I remember the NBA had, suddenly there were issues and they canceled the game. They said cancel a season, and suddenly all the college basketball is being canceled, including here with the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City. And I remember thinking, I don't think baseball is going to start on time. Little did I realize it would be 4 months, and then little did we realize how much the world would change Have you ever seen anything like this in your career with such drastic change?
Well, not drastic change like this, but I was out in New Jersey with one of the subsequent companies after mergers with Marion Laboratories. I was there for 9/11, and we were very close to that. I remember going to Mass that Saturday night, and there were 12 candles on the altar for the 12 people from our parish who lost their lives.
Wow.
And I think that represented a change for America, for us to think about our basic values and our principles and why we are who we are. And to me, that was a sea change for me as an individual and for the country.
Yeah, that was in my lifetime. That was the only other one that I could think of that changed everything. And you knew right in the moment that nothing was ever going to be the same. And then more and more and more. The difference is that while both of those moments, one a quick moment that had effects still that we're seeing to this day, the other one that played out day after day, month after month, they both changed the way we went about things. But this pandemic still lingers. We're still trying to figure out where we're at. But yet I look, and I was looking at the website, fueltolead.com, and there's a great quote, Dave, on there from Mr. K. It says, if you care about people and have high expectations for them, they will live up to those expectations. I feel like that's never changed, and that will never change, right? I mean, at the end of the day, wherever we're at in the world, it's still always about people. That's what I learned from the late David Glass, who, of course, had such a great connection with his predecessor with the Royals, Mr. K. It'll always be that, won't it, Dave? All about people?
It will be. And that's why some of these principles and practices will never change in terms of their potential to have a positive impact. Mr. K was a master of people and showing sincere appreciation and making sure people felt belonging. And those were two major tools that he used from the very beginning when he hired his very first associate after he moved out of his basement. He applied those principles to fairly well, and we all knew where we stood in his company. We all knew we were cared for, but we all knew we had to perform. And that combination is very, very tricky to accomplish as a leader. Many leaders work hard at showing that they care. Some leaders are too focused on just, this is what I demand of you. But to combine those two together and all the practices that allow that to happen allowed Mr. K to create a culture that led to an industry leader. And then the same thing in baseball.
I feel like I said I never got to meet Mr. K, but I feel like I hear his voice all the time. Even now when I hear David Glass's, and he just passed away, the anniversary as we're recording this was a little over a week ago, the 3-year anniversary. But I could hear Mr. Glass's voice, perhaps passing on the lessons learned from Mr. K. I hear the same thing from a Barnett Helzberg, where I'll hear David Glass saying everything we do in life is about people. And that is true in building successful teams in business. That is true in building successful teams in baseball. It's across the board. Myles, before we talk about fuel, I'm just curious what you're hearing over there at Rockhurst as these, your executive MBA students over there are very high level. They've got their pulse on everything. I've noticed that the discussions that we've been able to have over there when I've come in are so high level. They're not that difficult to facilitate because they're all thinking at that level. What are you hearing from the groups that pass through Rockhurst that might be different than the past?
Great question. I think the two biggest things that we're hearing from people right now is as we've come out of the pandemic, and as we have, and as people are reestablishing themselves, and maybe we're going into a recession right now, most businesses are really struggling to understand their workforce and understand what their customers of whatever they're selling want. Demand has changed, desires have changed, how customers want things customized have changed, how workers want to work has changed, and I think what keeps so many people up at night is how do we understand it? So as they're making strategies for how they're going to operate their business, how they're going to offer products, how they're going to deal with their workforce and all those decisions, what do people want? And that has shifted so much, and it has still not come down to a stasis yet. It is still evolving, and with a lot of organizations, it's very hard to turn a ship around overnight. But as again with COVID, we're just continuing to have to shift that. So we just really the shifting sands of what post-COVID consumers are looking for, what our employee groups are looking for, as this new demographic is looking for, is changing so much. And how do we as leaders, one, get it right? And back to this is how do we continue with the principles of our organization and our mission and hold true to that at the same time?
I guess, Dave, that's the big challenge, right? Is that no company wants to lose their identity. One of my favorite quotes, I've said it here on this podcast before, I say it in speeches a lot, comes from the current CEO of H&R Block, of course, located here in Kansas City, Jeff Jones, who said there's a slippery slope between tradition and irrelevance. You have to honor the past, but you can't stay stuck in the past. Just jumping on what Myles said there, Dave, how do you kind of balance that line of, hey, here's who we are. We don't want to lose our identity, but this isn't 1950. This isn't 1980. This isn't even 2015 at this point.
No, one of the things we draw on in our Fuel tool set is what we experienced with Mr. K at his company, Marion Laboratories, when we had to make the transition from a sales-driven, headquarters-supported small company to on the basis of gaining some new compounds that were really going to be sophisticated in their science and have to face much larger competitors. We had to transition from being that sales-driven company to being more of a strategy-driven company. And the change leadership that we saw during that period was dramatically successful, partly because Mr. K took it on himself to really have the new leaders he had brought in, Fred Lyons, Jim McGraw, Mickey Slaughter. He made it his job to have them internalize his principles. And they helped us go through the change that we had to go through. And part of that, and probably the most important first part, which we include in our Fuel to Lead forums, is creating a felt need for change. And that's something that I know is driven home too in the executive MBA programs at Rockhurst.
All right, let's talk a little bit about this program. And I think coming out around mid-April, and just looking through the website again, fueltolead.com says fuel uncommon executive leadership that produces results. Myles, give us a little taste of what you guys are looking to do.
Yeah, so Fuel and Dave's leadership is really trying to make sure that we do not forget the lessons learned. So again, as we keep talking about, it's this balance between tradition and what has worked well and what should be at the foundation of your company, no matter what, but also adopting it for today's needs. And so I really look at what a lot of what the Fuel program is going to do, which is going to be hosted by the Helzberg School of Management, is really going to help people balance that and understand that. I think one of the things that I'm very excited about Fuel, the program that's going to be here, is is getting people reminding who Mr. K was as a person and what Marion. I look back at it, I was in college when Mr. K passed away. So I'm probably one of the youngest generations that remember Mr. K and Marion Labs as it was. Most people now drive by and we have a stadium named after some guy named Kauffman, and a foundation, and a performing arts center, and with just so many other things that have names on them. We tend to forget who they are and what their purpose was. And Mr. K, and then through our extension with that, who Mr. K mentored Mr. Helzberg, who the Helzberg School of Management is named after. So there's a very strong and direct line from Mr. K to Mr. Helzberg into our Jesuit Helzberg School of Management, and just keeping those ideals alive while, again, preparing people to apply them to whatever new changes are coming on. So that's what I'm so excited about.
Yeah, and Dave, I mean, I've had the chance, as I mentioned, to be able to visit, I think 3 years in a row now with the different classes over there. And I just want to reiterate it, that these leaders, they're not upcoming leaders, they are leaders, and they're going to another level. I mean, there's just, what always stands out to me with those groups is there's an incredible level of curiosity, which to me tells me they want to learn. They want to be better, and they're dealing with all the issues that everybody else is dealing with right now. We talked about how everything is changing, but I've got to think, I mean, as we talk about the lineage here, learning from Mr. K, we mentioned Barnett Helzberg. I remember when the Royals sold a few years ago, when Mr. Glass sold, I was somewhere around that time with Barnett doing a podcast, and he said to me, Mr. K would absolutely love and approve of this move of selling this team to John Sherman because of the values that he has, because of what he was going to want to do for Kansas City, that this was all about Kansas City. This was about community. This is about civic pride more than anything. And so we've seen that carry on from generation to generation. How exciting is it for you with this program to be able to bring those principles that, again, in a different era, will still apply to the current leaders?
Well, we know they still apply because my business partner, Robert Glensky, and I, we went on beyond Marion in various executive positions to apply these principles and practices with success. So we know they work. They create uncommon results in a positive way and an uncommonly good culture, but they're not commonly done. By the way, it's an honor for us to be hosted by Rockhurst. I'm an executive MBA alum. And to that point, we also know those alums, when they leave, they want to know what's next. These, as you mentioned, Joel, these people are lifelong learners, and they want to continue to get better and better at what they do. And that's what Fuel is all about. We have a mission to bring Mr. K's business principles, which were not they were not just personal values, they were business principles that he saw as a pathway to success. And then as the company grew, he allowed us as his associates to create standardized practices that would be used by leaders at every step of the continuum, from strategy development all the way through to day-to-day operational execution of those. And that's really what made the Marion spirit and what made the uncommon success. So we're really proud to combine those principles, which match up very well with the Jesuit values there at Rockhurst.
Yeah, and to add to that, obviously even our executive leadership, our EMBA has changed, and so a foundation of everything Mr. K did, Mr. Helzberg did, the Jesuits have done, is about individual transformation as well. So again, you take it with you. Perhaps maybe a little different from when Dave went through our program. You tended to do an executive MBA, and then you were teed up to be that next executive, and then you probably stayed the rest of your career there. Most of our students today, they're again, keyed up for that next part of the within their company, but the likelihood they're going to stay with that company for the rest of their lives, the rest of their careers, is very, very unlikely. So one of the things that we all want to do is make sure that you take that culture, those ideas and practices, and they go with you. That the culture is within you as a leader, and you're setting an example no matter what company you're with, and you move that along. It doesn't stay at the company you just happen to be working for at the time when you receive this education. It truly transforms you and changes you as a leader, which then you move along with you.
Because you take it and it can apply to wherever else you go, and then hopefully you're sharing it with others. And this is, look, the day of staying with a company for your whole life. I mean, I don't ever remember my dad ever working for anyone but one company, the company man, and, retired, and that was that. And now, shoot, people jump after a month.
Right.
Maybe not those leaders, but I mean, it's, I even when I was coming up in television, it was, okay, I'm in this starter market. I probably shouldn't leave for a couple of years.
Right.
I probably should put in my time, and then put in my time. And now it feels like, the youngest generation coming up, those Gen Z kids, I'll call them, is they're here one day and they're the next. And I think that's one of the problems, Dave, that I'm seeing from so many companies. Add in trying to figure out this whole work from home, work from the office, hybrid, is how do you get everybody on the same page in terms of culture? That to me, Dave, is what I'm hearing from so many leaders right now.
Right. I totally agree with you. And while it represents a challenge, we believe it also represents an opportunity for competitive advantage, because you can almost, in our view, flip that upside down, and that people are leaving more frequently. And so some leaders would say, well, it's not necessary for me to take time with people and coach them and help them develop. But it could be, maybe people are leaving, and our research shows this is true, especially of millennials. People may be leaving and may be hard to retain because they're searching for that leader who will give them purpose, who will coach them, make sure they have clarity of what they're supposed to be doing, and then coach them to be successful. Mr. K made sure that every leader understood that they couldn't win as a leader in their career unless their people won before them. And so that's what we're bringing. It's a little different answer, but our research shows that millennials want a coach. They don't want a boss, and they want to work with a sense of purpose. And that's what Fuel is all about.
It's so interesting to me, Myles, because what I've been thinking all along is when something is lacking or something is different, if you can fill in that blank, if you can do it better than everyone else, then you do have that competitive advantage. And so for anyone that gets this, they're ahead. It's so easy with what Dave just talked about to say, oh, they don't want to be led, so the heck with them. And I'm thinking, what an opportunity. You guys use the word opportunity. Isn't that what everyone's looking for right now, Myles?
Yeah, they are. And one, just to echo Dave's point, he's absolutely right. People are, majority of workers today, salary is always important, but when they hierarchical rank, what they want is they want a job with purpose. They want a clear and delineated path for them to move up fast. And again, whether we like it or not, they expect to be moved up faster than past generations. And they want a coach. They want a mentor, and they understand it's a boss. And I think one of the mistakes that leaders make is, they'll grow out of that, or we'll manage that out of them, or we'll crush it out of them, or whatever word you want to use. I think those are the managers that are going to fail. That you're not going to be able to. This is a momentum that I think is an absolute fundamental change to how workers and how managers are done. We all know that employees need to adopt to the culture, but then also managers are going to have to start to learn to adopt to this new world. And frankly, the successful leaders, and this is part of this program, is how do you adopt to an ever-changing world? The second little part of that, Joel, is one of the things we're seeing now is this idea of competitive advantage. Competitive advantage in most markets used to last for years, if not decades. You look at GM and GE, they had competitive advantage literally for decades. Nowadays, we call in academia, we call in the research, we call it hyper competition, meaning you have about an 18-month window where you could capture competitive advantage unless you're able to transform and figure something out, it goes away. You can't hold it for a generation, something like these old stalwart companies used to do. So again, it's also, what are you always trying to do to keep and capture this sustained competitive advantage? The window of that has just condensed so much more.
Okay, gentlemen, before I get to my baseball theme questions, I just want to ask you both, and you've talked about this some, a very simple question. I think it's simple. How would you describe, Dave, I'll start with you. How would you describe uncommon success?
Well, I would describe uncommon success as that which stands above others and supports high ideals and values. So just to build on what Myles said, the most unassailable, if you will, competitive advantage is that which comes from people. So what Fuel is based on is the idea, and the idea that if as a leader, you can be a lifelong coach to all of your people, no matter how long they stay, you will create competitive advantage that is not based on price, that is not based on product, that other people can copy, but it's based on your people and a culture that is very hard to copy.
Myles, how about you? Uncommon success.
Yeah, I think the uncommon success again is the speed of the market change and being able to adapt to it. We have never seen where, again, maybe the basics of business and the basic ideas of economics and all that still stand there. We are on a trajectory of things changing in months, if not a couple of years. And so the uncommon success is going to become much more the norm. And it's preparing your company for constant change management, not change management every 10 years. The idea of a strategic plan every 10 years is out the window. If everything has changed by then. So how are we planning and operating always going on at the same time?
All right, let's get to the baseball theme questions before we wrap it up here. And I'll give you guys each a stab at these. And it could be in terms of Fuel, it could be in terms of Rockhurst, it could be in terms of career, whatever it is. I'm always interested in hearing what people have to say. And whether you guys piggyback off the same thing or not, I'll leave that up to you. But Dave, I'll start with you. How about a home run for you?
Oh, home run for me, no doubt, was when I was hired by Marion Laboratories. Marion Laboratories at that time was selling around $20 million a year in annual revenues of a very small company. I lived in Indianapolis. My father worked for Eli Lilly, which was one of the large, successful pharmaceutical companies of its time. And I can remember telling him that I took a job with Marion Laboratories. And he said, "I've never heard of Marion Laboratories. I'm in the pharmaceutical industry. What is Marion Laboratories?" I am so glad I took that job. I took it because of the people I met who interviewed me, and I was so inspired by them. And so that was my home run. I was a young, naive person, and I made the right decision that resulted in lifelong development and inspiration from Mr. K and his associates.
Yeah, you got more than you even could have expected, I'm sure, right? Life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
Myles, how about for you?
For me, it was finding a passion. Before I got into academia, both starting as a professor and then moving up into dean, I was in the corporate world. I had an office job, nice pay, nice benefits, nice career trajectory. Fell in love with the teaching, and as we know, teachers don't make all that much, and you start at the bottom. But something told me, Myles, this is your passion. You need to follow it. And my wife and I had the discussion, made the leap, and that has been an absolute home run. I do not look back. So I just tell people, find your passion, because it makes every bad day not quite as bad.
All right. How about a swing and a miss? Both of you have been in the world of business and leadership and academia for you, Myles, for a long time. I know that we all have our swings and misses. Dave, how about a swing and miss for you, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, very simply, somewhat embarrassingly, my swing and a miss was failing at my first management job. That was at a time when Marion was very small. We subsequently came to the point where we were selling $20 million a day. But at that time, we were very small, and we took the best salespeople and made them sales managers with very little training. And I found that I wasn't doing well. And the very things that made me successful as an individual contributor contributed to my failure as a leader of 12 different salespeople. I had to face that, and I had to learn how to do things like hiring people in a successful way and coaching people and gaining their trust. And I was able to do that, and I did it successfully. As a matter of fact, the company invited me into headquarters to help transfer those skills to then new managers who were coming on board. But my swing and a miss was a shock to me that those things that I learned as an individual contributor were not going to help me as a manager.
Myles, how about you?
Joel, I have a swing and a miss every day, and they're small ones, and it's going back to what we call emotional intelligence. And every time I leave a meeting, and I try to spend some reflective time about it, is why did I have to open my mouth? Why did I not say thank you more? Did I really need to be the person to bring that up? Could I have been more empathetic? And I think that's what makes you better from these small swing and misses every day, is going back and thinking, what could I have done better in that situation with that person I'm trying to help, coach, mentor, develop, situation to do, student, whatever the fact. So to me, it's a lot of swings and misses, which is, I'm glad we get a lot of balls and strikes.
Well, we are going to swing and miss a lot. To me, I always say, don't keep swinging and missing at the same pitch, because if you are, you're not having that self-reflection that you just talked about. Let's wrap it up with my favorite question, small ball. That's what I wrote my book about, the little things. You guys are baseball fans, the singles, the bunts. You can win by bunching together singles. What did we say with the Royals? Keep the line moving, right? That's true in business as well. And look, sometimes you swing for the fences and it works, and you do have that home run. But I can't tell you how many times I've interviewed somebody after a game that had the big home run, and the answer is almost always the same. I wasn't trying to hit the home run. I was just trying to put the ball in play. So you guys can go anywhere with this. My preference, but you can, ignore it, is that we talk about this in terms of fuel, since this is coming up in April and the program in Rockhurst. What does fuel represent in terms of small ball? What is small ball to fuel, or in your mind, what is small ball, Myles, for your students to be able to learn? Myles, we'll start with you. Oh, Dave, Myles, we'll start with you.
Okay. So I think the small things, again, I'm going to go back to the thing that I just said, is learning from your mistakes. You said it beautifully. It's, you're going to miss that pitch that one time. But have you learned? Have you reflected and discerned? A couple of very Jesuit words that we try to instill in all of our students, and Mr. K would have, is, what did you learn from from that, and just making sure you're improving yourself in very small increments every single day. And it's not the home run. It is literally the small ball accumulated over time that's going to make you a better leader. I've never had one big thing that is propelled my career. It's been a whole bunch of tiny little things, and then making sure I didn't do the dumb stuff, which I've done plenty of, more than once.
You know, I will just echo that exact sentiment. I can't think of like any. I can think of big interviews, big swings, landed this interview, but you know, I look getting ready to start my 16th season of Royals baseball, and it has been just little things along the way. A lot of it is just relationship building, and again, people that we've talked about. I think, Dave, that if Mr. K were still alive and leading this program, that it'd be the same things that you guys are passing on, which I guess is the whole point, right? Is continuing to pass these important lessons on that do pass the test of time. That's small ball to me. Dave, what is small ball to you?
Well, small ball to me is exemplified by, you know, another great business leader, Bill Marriott, who said, big results come from doing the little things. And that's really what Fuel is about. We focus on things to do on a daily basis, similar to what Myles was talking about. So how do you coach on a daily basis so that your people can be successful? So it all comes down to what you do day to day. Mr. K and his associates didn't invent any of the values and principles or any of the things to do. We just assembled them all in one place so they're accessible to leaders in the Kansas City area who want to be lifelong learners and participate in this. So it's little things you do in leadership day to day that to me are small ball, and that's what we share, are things to do for immediate impact.
Well, the website is fueltolead.com. On there, you'll read a little bit about the Fuel tool set of over 120 practical business methods and so much more. So we'll wrap it up with this. Dave, I'll give you the final word since you're the co-founder here of Fuel, and you can speak on behalf of you and Robert Glensky and Fuel. But Myles, as a lifelong learner yourself, to be able to see this Fuel program coming over to Rockhurst, I know you're excited about it. What is your excitement level, and what does it mean to have it coming?
I think it's absolutely wonderful. You know, a part of our mission is to create lifelong learners, and also to keep it in the city. And so here we have the principles of Mr. K very much focused on Kansas City, and we're focused on developing and keeping leadership in Kansas City, not to have a brain drain leaving here, to keep the Royals here, to keep everything in Kansas City. And so we're just so excited that we could be a small part of that, because that has been our mission since 1910. And you know, we can't do everything, so it's our partnership with groups like Fuel that is going to help us get our mission.
Yep.
Dave, final word on that regarding Fuel and Rockhurst and beyond.
We're very proud to be part of Rockhurst. You know, Mr. K made sure that 2 of his associates every year started out in the executive MBA program. So we had 4 executives in it every year. And it was a challenge, but we learned so much, and it was so pivotal. So we're proud to be there with them as hosts. And we're proud especially to take Mr. K's principles, which he didn't invent, but when you compile them and put them all, it's a challenge for all leaders to operate in that way. But the payoff is long term. And then I can tell you that in terms of the things to do, the leadership practices, the payoff is in the short term. It's immediate. You combine the two with a host such as Rockhurst helping us get in touch with prospective participants. You combine the two, and it's very powerful, and will create uncommon leaders.
Uncommon leaders with uncommon success. If anyone wants to learn more about the Fuel program, executive leadership, you can check out the website fueltolead.com and learn everything that you need to know about this. Yeah, fueltolead.com, and you'll certainly be able to learn more about Mr. K. I think everybody, at least around this area, has heard about him. As I told both of you, I feel like I know him, even though I never had that opportunity. But gentlemen, so great. Really nice conversation here. I'm grateful for your time, both of you, and the opportunity to be able to highlight Fuel. Dave Pickhardt, Myles Gartland, Dr. Myles Gartland. Appreciate you guys both. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you, Joel.